Hello, good evening. It's 9:34 evening. I'm tired and I'm going to get into wood and tree bark by species specifically. And what do I mean by that? Well, one, I noticed a bunch of guys doing a bunch of illustrating about tree chips, fungal dominated compost, and various other cats going on about it. What is fungally dominated compost? Well, fungally dominated compost is exactly what it is. It's a fungus. All fungus comes from the growth and birth of mushrooms. And they started this little campaign about chip drop and all of that stuff to try and prevent um, stuff going to the landfills. And that's a great thing. Then you have a bunch of people that's doing these things. And these people are expecting results instantaneously. Like you just picked up some ramen noodles or something, you know. Instead of instant soup, when you gotta open the pack, add water, stick it in the microwave, turn a knob, press a button, everybody gets the jigs. Well, wood composting by the lawn itself. What is the process? What is it? What does it? What does it actually means to actually compost wood? Well, wood, plant. All plants contain sugars. hmm How do we break sugars? What do we convert sugars into? Better yet, what can we convert sugar into? Carbohydrates, ethanol, and what's the predominant components, or what's the predominant elements that's found inside of a tree? You got cellulose, you got lignins, then you got 97.4% glucose throughout the whole vessel of that tree. Hmm. Whatever the tree species is, it may varies upon the amount of lignin and cellulose. Softwoods, better compost, more fungally dominated versus a pine. Pine, the best way to get a fungal dominated compost from pine wood is to actually harvest dead pine trees, not ones that fell over. It doesn't really matter, but I have found personally, if the tree is dead standing up like this in the forest, all of the resin that is throughout the fibers of that wood have drained, went back to the earth, and fed the surrounding area. So now the inside of it is like pulp, like paper, pulp. So I would harvest a tree that's dead standing, that's been standing dead, remove that so it's not a fire, starter and it gets struck by lightning and stuff like that. I will harvest those, all dead trees. If it's an oak, I'll harvest that if it's been on the ground, and I can stick my fingers straight through the bark into the wood and do a complete turn like that. Oh yeah, you coming with me. fresh cut wood. How do you process fresh cut wood? You're going to need clay, decomposed stone, one. Doesn't matter which clay it is, you're going to need it. Red is the best because it contains iron. That's just my opinion. I'm a Georgia boy. I love red clay. I would choose red clay over anything else, any other clay. Gray clay is high in gypsum. Gray clay is high in gypsum. It's decomposed granite and salt water gypsum. You can find gypsum close to coast. You don't have to buy gypsum. If you live in Florida and you got a marsh, you can find gypsum wherever you find fiddler crabs. They predominantly eat it as baby fiddler crabs that you use for bait. All of that mushy stuff that you step on, that's gypsum. That's free gypsum. Or you could find it around oyster beds, clam beds and oyster beds. It's gypsum. Two, it's also a clay. What's the last thing? Yeast, any kind of yeast. Why yeast? Yeast attacks sugars that are held inside of fibers and also attacks the resin aggressively, stripping it from the fibers and cellulose, all of that. It breaks it down. It rapidly accelerates the bacteria that break down wood, turning it into humus. That's how I was able to take my neighbor's tree chippings. All of her tree chippings. She had a gum sap pine. She had a couple of sea grape trees in the back there. She had a little bit of almost everything that they didn't want. It was growing into the power line. We chipped it up. I brought them over here. It took me like 4 months. Broke it down. Complete time was 4 months. Well, actually, it was sooner than 4 months. I broke it all the way down in about 3 months' time. And then I realized the top surface was broke down. 18 inches down beneath that was broke down. But in the center, it did not break down. So what I did, I had to return it and get the center on top and start inoculating that with yeast, and that broke down. And I think I did a video about that, about the hodgepodge compost. And what I mean by that definition of hodgepodge is it's a mix of wood elements. So it's not just one species of tree. It's something that's been mixed and chipped, so you can't really get a definite identifier on it unless you was there witnessing it being chipped. Kaleidoscope chippings. And one person was like, well, you got a mixture of different elements. Well, you got a mixture of different elements and components. At the same time, you also have a different breakdown from different species, which prolongs and lengthens the time of what you're trying to accomplish. That's why great composters only work with specific elements or items that they're composting to create their compost, versus hodgepodge, which the city volunteers and does for a dime at the taxpayers' pockets. Then you got other guys that tried to go into that venture that's here in Florida, and they pretty much got shut down. They wanted to do their operation outdoors, and not knowing, either they knew or they didn't give a shit. I'm just gonna put it like that. The resin inside of all trees, it doesn't matter which tree it is, the resin is actually sulfur. It's actually sulfur. Pine trees, they actually store their own sulfur. That's why they're evergreens. That's why they're evergreens. That's why they stay green. And around certain times of the year, they drop their needles, releasing that sulfur that was stored up in those needles back down to the floor surface. Preserving themselves and feeding themselves. Like the diseases that most plants run into for lack of deficiency of sulfur. hmm And how do you learn the elements that's predominant in your tree species? Well, you call forestry, and they'll either fax you a list or they'll email you a list of all of the elements that's listed within those tree species. hmm They got a research center. They also do testing for you for free. So I developed my methods firsthand. It wasn't. I watched a couple of videos. I looked at a couple of people things, but I didn't use none of their techniques. Developed and derived my own techniques because I used to work at a tree service company, a professional arborist company. I think the dude I used to work for, his name is Rob Perkins. It's down in Palm Beach. It's a good guy. A little hard ass, but who isn't? In the field of man, who isn't? But he's a good guy. He's a great guy. Um, so yeah, the whole trick to breaking it down quickly that I learned is inoculate your water with yeast. Step one. Add about 4 handfuls of red clay. We're in a mixer. Fill it with water. You're gonna make a brine. It's the fastest way to do it. Buy yourself some trash cans. You know, those like I illustrated on the video in vessel composting. What you're doing is not allowing the wood to escape from the presence of the bacteria that you're inoculating it with, to not escape from the presence of the clay that you made a brine with the yeast and all of that you're covering it with, to not escape from it. You put it out on a concrete slab, it's going to escape from the surface of the wood. So you don't want that. You want to keep it contained to allow those bacteria to accelerate into trillions of billions in a fraction of the time versus doing windrow bullshit. That's it. Give it a try. Leave a comment. Hit that like button. Spread the news. and help your boy out. Anyway, I hope that helped. I'm sorry that I'm not actually doing the video to actually show you the illustration of it. I do not have, I can get the material, but I actually want to do the material the way I'm illustrating in this video. So it's not confusing, so you're not wasting time, so you're not going on, oh, that's bullshit. No, it's not bullshit. It's actually documented fucking science. hmm I moved to Port St. Lucie 2 years ago. I mastered that in 2 years' time, along with other things. I constantly went from one project to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, sharpening my metal every step. It created a lot of controversy inside of this household. Let's say that. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the show. Forgive me for the cigarettes, but anyway, that's just what I do. Everybody entitled to their niche.